Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Wanted to offer some preliminary reflections on the report from the National Convention in the United States, the Baha'i National Convention. One of the statements that the House of Justice has made is that things are about to get a lot worse. That is from the convention, directly from the House of Justice. Now, exactly what that means, what that implies, obviously we have no way of knowing that. We can look around at the world and see the kinds of tribulations that are occurring, the need for collective security that the Guardian talked about, which we don't have, which has left our world into one which is basically run by bullies with no accountability. And it is very, very sad. I live 2 miles north of Mexico, a place where the cartels and not the government, not the police, run Mexico. They are a bully. They are a bully. And they are in charge, basically, of Mexico. They are right here as well. There are large mansions all over Hidalgo County, where I live, which is the warmest county in Texas. And Border Patrol does nothing. They do nothing. Every month, there's a listing of Border Patrol agents who have been arrested because they were taking payola from the cartels to look the other way. Police do the same thing. Mayors do the same thing. Meanwhile, the cartels destroy human lives in Mexico, decapitate people, have made Mexico into a barely livable country for many people. And then Central America, which is also a part of North America, is even worse than Mexico, much worse. The cartels run Central America as well, the same cartels. They are all over that area, and now they are making their way gradually into South America too, because they thrive on instability, and there is so much instability in the world today. They thrive on a lack of central governance, and central governance appears to be collapsing. Baha'u'llah said, "From 2 ranks power hath been seized, kings and ecclesiastics." And I think that is something that is very, very noticeable. The heads of state, whether kings or prime ministers or presidents, seem entirely incapable of reversing the calamities which now confront us at every turn. And now things are about to get a lot worse. I will not speculate myself on what I think that means, other than providing some thoughts on statements that are made in the Baha'i texts. For example, the time for the destruction of the world and its people hath arrived. That is, at the beginning of promised day has come, from Baha'u'llah. I will say that again. The time for the destruction of the world and its people hath arrived. What does that imply? I don't think any of us can really know Obviously, destruction is the destruction of the old world order. There will still be people here, I assume, I hope, to build the lesser peace and then the most great peace. But the world is about to get a lot worse, says the House of Justice. And so I think we have entered into a new phase, or maybe a better way to say that we are about to enter into a new phase in the process of disintegration. The Guardian talked about those two different phases, disintegration and integration. As Baha'is, through the Institute process, through clusters, through Ruhi classes, and all the other activities of the 5-year plan, we are engaging in the process of integration. We are laying the foundation for the most great peace, the golden age, which will emerge in the future, perhaps the distant future. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is lost. It bothers me because most of my friends are not Baha'is. Well, that doesn't bother me. I'm happy that most of my friends are not Baha'is. But it saddens me when I see what's happening with their lives. None of my friends, and I mean that literally, maybe I just have bad friends, but none of my friends is centered and grounded and centered. To me, we need to stand in the midpoint of the circle. If we think of the world as a circle, each one of us standing in the midpoint, being grounded and centered. Being grounded, I think, is vertical. It is basically our place in relationship to the ground. Being centered is horizontal. It is our relationship to humanity. So one is the relationship that we have to God. The other is the relationship that we have to other human beings as spreaders of divine fragrances. And if there was ever a time when Baha'is need to be spreaders of divine fragrances, I think it is right now. Not to say that it was not always required. It was. How much we contributed to the current situation, of course, we have no way of knowing. The process of disintegration is directed by God himself, by Baha'u'llah, the supreme manifestation of God. We are not the ones who are destroying the old world order. We are the ones who are building, laying the foundation for the new world order under Baha'u'llah, the world order of Baha'u'llah. And yet, I am so saddened looking around at the people I know, at my friends. All of them, without a single exception, is severely depressed. Some Baha'is are too. I mean, it affects us too. We are not immune from the kinds of crises which affect the world around us. But at least we have something to turn to. We can turn to the faith of Baha'u'llah. We can turn to Baha'u'llah. We can turn to the glorious maiden, Horia, in the Valley of Wonderment. We can turn to Abdu'l-Baha. We can turn to the beloved guardian, the Bab, and the Universal House of Justice. We can also turn to all the great prophets that have come that we know of, and maybe even those that we don't. I especially like turning, for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why, but to Paul, the Apostle Paul. He called himself an apostle, a messenger of God, even though he was not one of the 12 apostles. He was, in my view, the messenger of God, the reflection of the Spirit of Christ. And what did he do? He contextualized, meaning he related the gospel to individual communities. He recognized that what the Ephesians, the Corinthians, the Galatians, and so on needed were not the same. And I think that as Baha'is, that is a good example. Paul is a wonderful example to follow, to reach out to people wherever they are, but not expecting that they will follow us or that they will be even like us, but trying to relate the message of Baha'u'llah to them. Things are about to get a lot worse. My feeling is that when that happens, however bad the dispositions are of people today, and they are very bad in my experience, and I assume in yours as well, the phenomena that are about to take place, whatever they are, and of course we have no way of knowing, although we can get some hints from Baha'i primary sources, people will become even more lost than they are now. And perhaps, hopefully, receptive to the divine fragrances. And so in some way, and for each of us, it may be different. We need to figure out a way that we can spread the divine fragrances. How I do it, how you do it, how the person sitting next to you does it, is not necessarily going to be the same. And we shouldn't be copycats, because being a copycat does not work. We all have our own natures, our own individualities, I should say, which are a part of human nature. We all have our own abilities, our capabilities, and we need to take those abilities and use them to reach out to souls. At this time, especially at this time, when people are going to be lost and are going to be looking for some relief from their pain and suffering, and watching the suffering of people around them, things are about to get a lot worse, says the Universal House of Justice. Whether the members of the House of Justice know what that implies, I have no idea. They were inspired by the Supreme Concourse, by Baha'u'llah and the Bab, with this knowledge. That does not mean that they know the specifics of what is going to happen. Perhaps they do know some of them. I don't know. But they are sitting in a place, the seat of the Universal House of Justice in Haifa, Israel, looking down at the world and aware of the fact that the world is plunging into a kind of state of being lost. Those of us who are Baha'is have a special privilege that however bad the world becomes, we do not need to be carried away by it. We can cling to the rope of Baha'u'llah's covenant. We can cling to the House of Justice, which is the standard bearer of the covenants of God in this age. We can turn to them we can rely upon them, or as I personally do, pray to them for guidance. And I think that is what we need to do right now. We need to focus on how we can keep ourselves grounded and centered. And then, like Paul, standing in the midpoint of the circle to reach out to people where they are and convey to them in some way the message of Baha'u'llah. Sadly, I will admit, I have never been a successful direct teacher, except in mass teaching. Mass teaching is not done that much anymore, at least not in the US. I have a friend, a Baha'i friend, who is an excellent teacher. He has brought dozens of people into the Baha'i faith, dozens. I know most of them. And yet, some of them are deceased. Many of us are getting old. But dozens of people into the Baha'i faith. I wish that I could do that. I have tried. But I have been largely unsuccessful. But no matter, I can still spread the divine fragrances. I can live the Baha'i life to the best of my spiritual abilities. I can pray to Baha'u'llah to give me strength. I can be an example to the people of the world who are crying out for one. A bad example in my case, I think, but I can try to be one nonetheless. We can all be examples. In a moment where things are about to get a lot worse, we don't know what that is, but we know that the world as we are used to it, the comforts that we are accustomed to as Baha'is, may suddenly not be around anymore, or may be significantly reduced. I know for me, I'm used to driving around, going to restaurants, visiting a lot of people, doing things that I can do, but I know that a lot of people in the third world cannot do. They simply do not have that access. Perhaps that ability to avail myself of many of those privileges and privilege itself may suddenly be taken away, like pulling a carpet from beneath someone's feet and dislocating that person, making that person lost, in need of comfort. And who can comfort them better than us as we spread the fragrances of the message of Baha'u'llah? That is what we can do. So I must say I was very moved by that statement. On first glance, it may sound a bit frightening, but as Baha'is, we have nothing to be frightened of. We have the covenant, we have Baha'u'llah, we have the beloved master, the Bab, the guardian, the house of justice, looking out for us. For that matter, so does the rest of the world. But they do not know that, at least not in the way that we do. As people who have accepted the covenant of Baha'u'llah, we have the advantage, I suppose, of being able to be grounded and centered and to stand in the midpoint of the circle. So to me, that metaphor of a circle is very important to me. The world is a circle. The earth is a circle of sorts, not literally, but close to being a circle. And if we stand in the middle of it, metaphorically, we can know where we should be and how we should be helping others. We can be grounded and centered. We can look up. We can look down. We can look to our left. We can look to our right, as in that wonderful prayer, and to every other side to which we are exposed. And we can be the apostles, the emissaries of Baha'u'llah to the world, the teachers of the Baha'i faith to the world. Wherever we are pioneers where we are. We are pioneers. Nobody needs to give us permission. We don't need to ask for it. We don't need to apply to become a foreign or a home front pioneer. Where I am right here in the Rio Grande Valley at the intersection of the United States and Mexico, I can be a pioneer. I can spread the divine fragrances. So I guess the point of this episode of my podcast is to bring those two things together. One, the statement by the House of Justice that things are about to get a lot worse. And second, what our response to that should be, to stand at the midpoint of the circle, vertically and horizontally centered. And then we will have nothing to fear, but we can help others. And it appears to me that the time when others will really need our help is shortly. And what shortly means, I don't think anybody can know, but is shortly to unfold. For the time being, this has been Mark, by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day, a very pleasant day, please, and an even better day tomorrow.